Yeah, laughing is kind of appropriate um, because when I got a phone call from the United Nations saying they'd like to come to San Francisco, 50th anniversary of the UN Charter, would I host them? I said yes, and they said our vision for the service is all the nations of the world and all the religions of the world, same time, 1 hour. It'll be a beautiful thing. I said, great, I'll host it. That's wonderful. And they said, our vision is that we'd like to bring all the nations of the world. We'll have 185 ambassadors, and we'd like you to bring all the religions of the world and all the religious leaders. And there's the laugh. I mean, come on. I thought, well, I'm not doing anything this afternoon. I'll make a few phone calls. And, when you're entering into something that's so outrageous, you go to bed at night and you're lying there and you're thinking, why did I say yes to that? I don't know anything about Buddhists. I don't know anything about Hinduism. I don't even care. I'm an Episcopal bishop. I'm working hard to take care of this diocese. I don't have time for all this. And then the longer I lay there in February of 1993 and thought about it, I was thinking, come on now. The religions have met, the nations have met every day for 50 years to struggle together for global good. And in the same 50 years, the religions of the world haven't spoken to each other, not for 1 minute. And I was thinking, who's more moral in terms of having a vocation for the world, the nations or religions? And nations aren't very good, but religions are worse. We got to step our game up here and talk to each other and begin to work together. And in the long haul, my greatest gift was invincible ignorance. I'd never taken a course in comparative religions. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know what I was doing. But I made a vow to God. And I said, I commit the rest of my life to being a catalyst for the creation of a united religions. I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know what it would look like. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any connections. There was nothing to be connected to. But I thought, okay, here goes the adventure. Let's sail off. Don't look back. Don't look back. You lose your courage. Don't think about it. I remember later on somebody said, let's do a feasibility study. And somebody said, no, this is not feasible. Let's just go do it. Well, okay. So the next morning I thought, well, where do you grab hold of something here? So I called up every interfaith organization in the world that I could think of. The Parliament of World Religions, the WCRP, the International Association for Religious Freedom, et cetera, et cetera. And I asked to speak to the General Secretary. I didn't know who they were. And I said, my name is Bill Swing. I'm from California. I'm a bishop. And would you meet me in New York on June 21st? And they said, yes. And so I went to New York, and all these guys were there, and women too, men and women. They were all there, and I said, here's the vision I have. United Nations, there's going to be a united religions, and you guys can work with me, and we can all work together to create a united religions. And they said, no way. So, okay, this isn't going to work. So I thought, I'm going to get on an airplane. I'm going to go talk to every religious leader in the world that I can get to. So I went to speak with the Pope and the Dalai Lama and Mother Teresa and the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Shankaracharya of Kanchipuram and the Grand Mufti and the Sheikh of Al-Azhar. And you can't think of anybody I didn't go visit. And I asked them one question, a simple question. Are you willing to deputize a person from your tradition to meet with a deputy from other traditions to pursue peace among religions? Because if we got more peace among religions, it would change world history. And every one of the religious leaders said, absolutely not. And I said, okay, Thank you very much. I've learned a lot from you guys. I know that the world someday is going to turn to religions and say, you guys got to get your act together. You can't be given immunity from the world's problems together. You got to get together and get to work. And it's going to happen. And I just learned it's not going to happen with interfaith. It's not going to happen with religious leaders. And I thought, who's left? It's the grassroots people. And then it dawned on me, they're the only people who could ever make it happen because they have mobility. I remember being in Jerusalem with the Dalai Lama. He and I were putting on a conference. I'm a great name dropper. So the Dalai Lama and I were sitting on the floor, and there was a big archbishop in his throne. And I said, I'm trying to start a United Religions, and I'd like to invite you. And could you be part of this? And he said, no, I can't do that. I said, why not? And he said, I'm a prisoner on my throne. I have to sit on this throne every day with people coming to me. I can't get out and work on interfaith peacemaking or something like that. And so then the issue is, okay, we know it's not going to be at the top. It's not going to be out here. It's going to be down here. So what do you do? So I went to a bank and I got a line of credit for $1 million on a clergyman's salary. If you ever wonder why banks get in trouble, I'm at Exhibit A. They loaned me $1 million. So I went out and I hired 4 people. We started doing I was working as a bishop. I had 65 institutions, banks, hospitals, and immigration, life care facilities. And then I had 87 churches, and then I had 400 priests, and I had a lot going. But I was still starting this other thing over on the side. I was working kind of weekends or nights sort of thing. Sometimes from between Monday and Friday, I'd zip off to Sri Lanka, India, and Pakistan and meet all these people, then come back and be in church on Sunday morning. Nobody missed me, or they never caught up with me. But I lived a double life for a lot of years, maybe 13 years. So I really worked hard. But we met all these great people from around the world, and we brought them to Stanford in 1997, 98, 99, and we wanted to write a charter. And what we found out that if you get a whole bunch of religious people together, they don't know much about cooperation, but they know a lot about competition. And we couldn't find language to write a charter. You could write a charter in a weekend, say love, peace, joy, brotherhood, all those words, but they don't mean anything unless they're in context of some deep thinking. So I thought, okay, we're not going to get there this way. So I went out and I hired the guy who invented the Visa card. His name is Dee Hock. And I said, Dee, what you did with banking, could I do with religion? And I said, I don't want the greatest amount of authority being up at the top. I want the greatest amount of authority being down at the bottom. I want this to function like nature functions, biomimicry, where it grows itself every day. He said, yeah. I said, we can do that, but you have to sit in a room with me for 3 years to do this right. I said, I'm a working man. I can't do that. He said, it's the only way it's going to be done. So I said, okay. So 14 of us, every 6 weeks, we took 3 days out of our life, morning, noon, and night, for 3 years, and came up with a preamble, purpose, and 18 principles, and an organizational design. Let me just build. Here's the degree of difficulty. Can you imagine writing one sentence that every religion in the world would agree on? Okay? Imagine writing a whole charter that all the indigenous tribes would agree on, all the religions would agree on, all the humanistic traditions would agree on. I mean, this is really hard work. So Dee pushed us. He believed, he had a theory about chaos and order. It was called chaotic alliance, that you got to have, to have real natural life, you got to have chaos. But you can't live with chaos, then you got to have order. But then the order begins to harden your arteries, so then you got to have chaos. So you got to build chaos and order into this thing. So we did that. We built chaos and order into something that keeps changing, growing with the times. We've been around 20 years, and we're adapting always. There's a skeleton, but the flesh keeps changing, and that's very exciting. So it took us 3 years to write the charter. The most important thing, even more important than the words, and the words are terribly important, the most important thing is that during the 3 years where we met at Stanford, we became a global community of all the religions of the world and all the tribes. The words came second. If the words came first, it would be hollow. But the community and the body came first, and then the words gave expression to what was being lived and what the aspiration was. So then we took off from there, and we signed the charter in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And you say, why? Why Pittsburgh? We never had anything to do with Pittsburgh, but the first principle of URI says we are not a religion. We are a bridge-building organization, with the understanding that the world has enough religions. It doesn't have enough bridges between the religions. So we're sitting there saying, what city in America has the most bridges? Well, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They have the Ohio River, the Monongahela River, and the Allegheny River. There are bridges everywhere. Let's go to Pittsburgh. That's as dumb as it is. So we're pretty light on our feet. And, you know, I know what you're thinking. Who's paying for all this? My wife and I were $800,000 in debt. I mean, this is not sort of a nice idea. We bet our whole lives on it. I mean, it's all or nothing at all for us. So it's August, it's 1999 or 98. We're sitting there and everybody else is on vacation. We're working on the charter with Dee Hock and $800,000 in debt, thinking, oh man, what have I done? Phone rings. One of the guys on the staff goes down the hall. He comes back. He said, Bill, what was that about? Yeah, it's an odd phone call. A woman died in Germany. And in her will, she said, here's an amount of money to my daughter. I want you to get rid of it immediately. Immediately. So the lady was looking around for places to give the money, and she'd call them up in August and said, I'd like to speak to the development officer. I said, well, the development officer's on vacation. Call back in September. Lady said, I got to get rid of this money. So she calls up URI. Why us? I'll never know. I'll ask her someday. She lives a long way away, and I don't want to use any names. But we said, Bill, how much money is she going to leave us or give us? And he said, I was so nervous I didn't ask. So we thought, well, $10,000 would help. So 3 days later, a check for $1 million arrived. The right person arrived the right time every time. You know, you just look up and say, you want this to happen, don't you? Keep on going. Keep on going. Don't stop here. When I was going around the world, somebody thought my journey was interesting, so they wrote it up and sent it out on the wire service. And there wasn't a newspaper in America who picked it up except the Cleveland Plain Dealer. and they put it on the business and finance page with a picture of me on the business and finance page. And in Cleveland, Ohio, Cleveland Plainville, there's a Case Western Reserve School for Management. And inside that, there's another school called Social Innovation for Global Management, SIGMA. And the guy who's head of it is David Cooperrider, who invented appreciative inquiry. And so he read it on a Sunday morning. He threw it in the garbage can. He sat around with his wife drinking coffee, and he said, "I just read this very interesting thing." And she said, "Well, let's look at it again." So she pulls it out and they sit there and read it. And he calls me on the phone, and he said, "Look, this is the most important social innovation that we've ever seen at our school, and I'm the head of the school, and I'll send my PhD students out to work for you. We'll design all the stuff you ever need to be designed. We'll work for you for nothing. And we'll take you to 50 countries in the world and introduce you to people for fundraising, people you need to know. And I'm working on the creation of something called appreciative inquiry." So he gave that to us, and we open up all of our sessions with appreciative inquiry. No matter where we are in the world. It's I did that today with Luis Rios. It's all because of David Cooperrider. So he was the right guy. Dee Hock was the right guy. The woman with $1 million was the right person, and it goes on and on and on. I could give you a whole laundry list of people who walked through the door and they were the right person at the right time. I did a TED Talk this year, and everybody was 28 and I was 82. When it was over, I was so happy. I got a standing ovation, but it's kind of like tomorrow. I got a lot of work to do tomorrow. I'm working on nuclear disarmament. I'm leaning forward on a lot of things with nuclear disarmament. That's followed by an hour session with General James Mattis and myself talking about peace and war. Yeah, I hardly ever talk about peace and war with the Secretary of Defense in front of 400 or 500 people. So I've spent the last 2 months writing myself big things about peace, war, where, what kind of study, et cetera. So I have to be razor sharp tomorrow. And then tomorrow night we're honoring George Shultz, and I'm the master of ceremonies, and so I need to be on top of my game for that evening with another 400 or 500 people. So when I look around, I think, yeah, well, this is going great, but man, I got to produce. That's the way I feel. It is satisfying, but there's so many things that we need to do, and we're not there yet. So that I'm about 99% focused on tomorrow and the tomorrow after that one. But deep down, I feel very blessed. Every morning I wake up and I say the same prayer as soon as my eyes go, which in the prayer it says, "Oh God, in whom we live and move and have our being, we humbly beseech you to guide and govern us by your Holy Spirit." And I always felt in my life that the Holy Spirit was just saying, go, go, go. And then somebody says, "Didn't you do a great job?" And I think, well, I did, but you ought to see who's behind me. You do a great job too if you got pushed. So when I go to work in the office, all these young, techie, sharp people, and I only got a computer that, a little while ago, and I can hardly use it. I know that I don't speak their language. I know that my music is not their music. I know they're, metaphors and language is not my metaphor and language. And I know that I'm out of step. You know, my generation came and went. And I'm still hanging around, working, but it belongs to Victor. It belongs to those people in the office. It belongs to the youth. It's fun to be an old fogey running around with young people. It really is. It keeps me young. But Victor, he has so much enthusiasm. He's so smart. He has peripheral vision. He picks up people and what's going on, but he picks up the emotions of people and the intellect, and he stays he stays looking for big things, big people that could be affiliates, people that could help us, people that could make you or I do things that we've never done before. So I really love working with him. He's really a good guy. But URI belongs to him, and it should be. And I love it to belong to him. I sleep better at night. No, it belongs to him, not to me.